Hi, how you doing? How you doing, everybody out here? This is the Faceless Preacher coming at you. Um, I just wanted to discuss something real quick, and that is certain message I wanted to talk about, and but just really kind of stuff off the top of my head. But if you ever are experiencing something where you don't understand why it's happening to you, or it just makes no sense whatsoever. And these are for the people. This is just this message, especially goes out to those who believe in Jesus, just for today. Just for those who are believers and believe in Jesus and have that Christian walk. You ever going through a situation where you're like everything's against you, and you're like, why is this happening? Like kind of like a Job situation. Like anybody doesn't know about Job. Job is somebody who uh, went through basically the enemy went to God and said, uh, Job will basically turn from you if you just take away basically everything he has. He basically, um, they, God and Satan had a conversation in heaven. And really, it wasn't basically they had a conversation. The devil went up to God because the devil and the angels were all presenting themselves because the devil can present himself to God, you know, when God allows it. And so he came to him and he said, well, and God said, what have you been coming from? And the enemy says, oh, just going here and forth throughout the earth. And then God says, have you considered my servant Job? And he says, he's basically just and everything he does is right in my eyes. That's basically what God says. Now I'm just giving you a short synopsis and a short, everything I'm saying is just like not quote exactly word for word from the Bible. I'm just giving you the short story basically of it. And then and then the devil says, well, uh, Job basically is that way because you're blessing him, you're giving him everything. I can't touch him. So basically, there's a hedge around Job that the enemy, the devil, could not do what he wanted to do to Job. So God says, okay, well, and he allows the devil, he says, okay, well, I'll let you do what you want to do with him, basically. That's what he says. He said, only don't kill him. Don't don't kill him. Basically. That's what he says. That's what eventually arrives at. And so the devil goes out and he kills his children. He takes away, he kills his cattle. And back then, your cattle was basically your livelihood, your cattle and your servants. He kills all his servants. He does all this in one swift move. So Job loses everything at one time. And then he turns and add insult to injury, he turns his wife against him to where his wife was even telling him, get this, he keeps his wife alive. Okay, he does that because see, the devil knows us. The devil knows what gets to men. The devil knows what can get to a man and what can destroy a man. He keeps his wife alive only to insult him, and he still uses his wife and talks through his wife to get to Job. So these are just ways that the devil works. So just giving this example, Job ends up, going through and it's like, why is this happening? Why is all these things happening to me? What's going on? And God doesn't answer, and he's waiting and waiting. And see, he talks to his friends, and his friends are like, well, maybe the reason why is because you did this wrong. Or maybe the reason why is you did this wrong. They basically say that, except there's only one friend who actually doesn't say the wrong thing, but he still doesn't explain to Job what happens because none of them really know why Job's going through this. They basically think that it's something Job did. And so finally arrives where God speaks to Job out of the storm and he says, he basically doesn't answer. He still doesn't answer Job's question of why it's happening, but he basically asks him things that Job wouldn't know, like, well, who put the stars in the sky, and how can you measure all the water in the world, and just stuff like that. Like, do you know the measurement of the deeps, and have you been to the death? Like, do you know death? Can you call out, you know, uh, the lightning, and he answers to you. He says this way, I go this way. He basically says things that there's no way that Job can understand. And basically what he's trying to say is, you can't question me because I'm God. But at the same time, he rewards Job in the end, and he gives him double the amount that he had before. So basically, God says in a nutshell, like, and he even tells Job that his friends were wrong and to pray for Job. But get this, he doesn't reward Job until he tells Job, you have to pray for your friends and forgive them. And then you have to pray for them, and then he tells his friends that they need to forgive, Job. So his friends, they end up and obviously, that's what happens. His friends end up forgiving him. I mean, not forgiving, but ask for forgiveness from Job. And Job actually prays for his friends. After Job prays for his friends, Job is given everything back ×2. So the bottom line is, and that's not always guaranteed either, I will say that. But the bottom line is, God is behind any type of demonic thing against you. God is behind it. What I mean by that is, God is not the author of it, but God allows it. So that if the enemy is trying to do something against you and you're a follower of Jesus Christ, okay, let me get this straight so you understand. So you don't get me wrong with this. The enemy is trying to do something in your life. God is aware of it because he has to go to God first to have permission. Now this is assuming this is something that you haven't done by yourself, because we know that if we do something wrong ourselves, we open up a door to the enemy to do what he wants. But in this case, Job didn't do anything wrong that was, now I'm not saying Job's not a sinner, but he didn't do anything directly wrong to get what was going on happen, get the consequences of what was happening in this case. In this case, it was just God knowing that Job would pass that test. It was kind of a test that God wanted to show the enemy how much Job was a follower of him. See, because God wanted to show two people. He wanted to show two people how much Job's faith was, how great Job's faith was. He wanted to show the enemy that, because God already knew he was going to pass the test. So he already knew how strong Job's faith was. Or he wouldn't have let the enemy do that in the first place if he didn't know Job was going to pass that test. See, God wanted to prove to two people that Job could pass that test. The enemy himself, because the enemy doesn't know, because the enemy can't tell the future. So that's why the enemy did that. The enemy used all that because he really thought Job would fall. He wanted to prove that to the enemy, and he wanted to prove that to Job himself. He wanted to prove to Job that he had enough faith to pass that test. And Job ended up passing the test. Although he did, it was tough for him, and he was like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? He passed it. So that's what I'm going to tell people, that anybody who's dealing with something like that and you're saved, know that it's a test and you feel like you haven't done anything wrong, or somebody's coming up against you, especially if it's somebody who's really close to you. If it was like an ex-wife or brother or sister or best friend, or somebody that you've done everything you could for this person, ex-wife or ex-husband, it could be either way. You've done everything you can for this person, and this person is truly coming against you in every sense of the word. You've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing to deserve it, in where you intentionally tried to hurt this person, and they're doing everything they can to intentionally to try to hurt you. That's not that person. I want to get you to say, that is a demonic spirit behind that person. That is the enemy using that person. But I will say this: that person does have a fault in it as well, because that person is allowing the enemy to use them. That person is allowing, in most cases, now sometimes some cases that person may not be saved, that person doesn't know that the enemy is using them at all. Like, they don't know. Sometimes that person does know the enemy is using them too. So there's many things, but the bottom line is, whether it be one way or the other, that enemy is using that person to get to you. So you got to understand. You don't think about that person. You might be thinking in your head, well, this person wasn't like this before, or maybe the person was like that before, but it just hadn't manifested yet. The bottom line is this manifesting now. So you need to take precaution and just remember that it's God's battle, not yours. So just hang in there, because believe me, I'm going through I'm going through a situation like that currently, and I've gone through that in the past. So I'm telling you, just hold on, because God's gonna be your vindicator. Remember, wait on the Lord. It says wait, and also says, let vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Remember, that's what it says in the Bible. Wait on the Lord, because if you wait on the He shall renew your strength. You shall mount up on wings like eagles. You shall run and not be weary. You shall walk and not faint. Remember that. All right. Blessings and bye from the Faces Preacher.